right, everyone, let's go for it. I'm going to get the stream showing on the side here. Good stuff. That way I can keep tabs on everything, including the chat. All right, everyone. Hi, welcome. We're doing virtual BrisJS now. As I said, bear with us. I'm sorry we're a bit late. We're always a bit late in person anyway, so what's new, right? But this is cool. I've seen some folks that are not residing in Brisbane join the call. This is fantastic, the benefits of remoteness. So I'll just kick into our next slide here. So one thing I did mention on some of the original text that we had on Meetup page and some of the stuff that I sent out is we're using Slido to be able to go and gather questions from everyone and also just get that feedback thing happening. We'd like to get some polls and things at the end of the Meetup as well, and just sort of get some feedback, you know, in terms of if you've got any tips or any ideas you'd like us to follow up on. Happy to do that. So that's the QR code and the web address you need. There's a code which is 58724 on slido.com, and that will take you there, and you can go and type in a question, and what will happen is I'll pause after each of the presenters, and then they'll be able to go in and, you know, I'll read out the questions and we'll be able to get some feedback from everyone at that point. So let's jump straight into it. Now, we are all distributed at this point, but it is still a nice thing to acknowledge the traditional owners of wherever you are and pay respect to its elders past and present. It's a great idea to go and do that research and find out where you live and you know, make that acknowledgement of country for yourself. So RSVPs give you the YouTube link. I'm sure you figured that out. I did mention that in the post. So you're watching right now, so that's a good thing. The YouTube link will change all the time because that's just the way they like to do their live events. Okay, yeah, it seems to be still working. I got a warning message. If anyone knows if there's any problems on the stream, do shout out. I'll try and correct anything. Yeah, the ability to get the statistics on you know, how many attendees we get and, you know, how this is all going. It's really valuable to me as well. So although I don't have to cater for pizzas and drinks, this is still really useful. So thank you very much for doing that. Code of conduct, we're in an online virtual world, and the code of conduct applies just the same. If it's a harassment-free experience for everyone, so any of your interaction channels, your questions posed, your chat channels, all those things, they apply to the code of conduct, just like they do in our forums and just like they do in GitHub and our social channels. So please have a look at that. Please abide by that as we go forward. I'm still looking for presenters, everyone. So if you're keen to do the hopefully more accessible from home presentations, please reach out, submit some talks. We're always happy to take them, even if they're not for next month. They're, you know, going forward several months. We're happy to schedule them in. They'll be all measured through our GitHub issues, and we'll apply different labels and different months onto that to be able to make sure that that happens. And GitHub issues, as example there, the screenshot from December 2019. Might have to update that now. So you'll see that there's different labels on there. We mark it for exactly how long it will be when it's a candidate for the next month and when it's actually confirmed by everyone and things like that. There's plenty of other social interactions you can get from us on all our web socials. Twitter's being the most active one, I find. You're on YouTube right now, so thank you for finding our channel. Facebook has a BrisJS meetup on there as well. And we have the brisjs.org website as well. That one's got a few links that matter, especially now that a whole bunch of people have experienced some hardships in the different industries that are really affected by the COVID-19 virus. This is even more important. So we've got our little community job board, which is powered by GitHub issues. If you go through to /hashjobs, Just hit the link at the top. You'll find there's a whole bunch of recent additions there. That one, for example, ABC News wants a senior developer. There's 3 senior JavaScript developers at Tiny. They produce the MCE editor as well. So those folks are hiring. There's a whole bunch of things going around in the community. PCCW Global is doing the same thing. So if you need anything, if you need or you know somebody who might be interested, please tell them to reach out to us. I'll follow up at any of the links on the job board. Community events. I got this one sent in last minute. So the IBM Call for Code is happening. It's a global challenge, and I think originally it just was like climate change, but now they've gone, well, actually, we could tackle these other big issues. So good old COVID is in there as well. So what happens is there's an Australia and New Zealand local hackathon, and that goes to help get people started. So, oh, Ash Kid, thank you for coming up on the channel there. It's good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. So yeah, you can follow some of the links there, grab some screenshots, so you can get some more info on the whole initiative Call for Code at developeribm.com. There's a shortened link I made because it's a really long Eventbrite link. So grab that one as well if you're interested in attending the local hackathon. And we always thank our sponsors for their support going forward. PCCW Global, I work there. They are sponsoring the Zoom account so that we can actually do these online now. So thanks very much. We're actually hiring a whole bunch of folks, which is a release train engineer. That's for our safe agile processes. We're hiring senior and mid JavaScript developers, Java Kotlin software engineers, and systems engineers, or someone who's really keen on their DevOps practices and trying to teach the rest of the team about how to do that properly and deal with a lot of different systems we have. So we've got a whole bunch of openings. We're trying to build a whole new feature team there as well. That global jobs link has been updated just to point to our LinkedIn at the moment. But if you're interested in following up any of those, please just get in touch with me directly and I'll get you straight through the door and make sure all those things are forwarded as well. There's obviously no pizza sponsored by us, sorry. But we do have an actual online meetup going forward. I'm no promises, but I actually started looking into whether or not we can get a pizza place to issue, I don't know, coupon codes, and everyone can go and get their own pizza delivered.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Thanks, Siri. So yeah, there's I don't know what to do there, but you know, I appreciate people coming up on Twitter and saying, hey, we're still going to get the pizza delivered, right? That was excellent. Auto in General has been providing our, you know, in real life meetup venue forever. So I still wanted to continue the shout outs for them. I really appreciate their ongoing support there as well. They are always looking to hire JavaScript and Java devs as well. So if you're interested in that kind of thing as well, please get in touch with me and I'll forward you through as well. JDP has been looking after our drinks forever and a day. Again, can't send you the drinks right now, but we appreciate them all the same for supporting us for this long. They've also got a line on some new jobs there as well. There's a front-end React QA tester job, fully remote, 120K base. You can contact Kirsten from JDP, who's been coming to all our meetups as well. So thanks very much for that. And I can see someone saying thanks for the pizza delivery. Well, this is great. I'm glad you continued the tradition and grabbed some of the pizza. So this is really good. If you could bring me one, that'd be great too. I had pizza for lunch. Does that count? Cool. We'll jump straight into tonight's presenters. So we're going to have a few speakers. We got a co-speaker talk, which is excellent. I always love that. How to create a minimal design system with limited resources. That one's your headliner for tonight. We've also got ES2020 features you can use now. That's a nice lightning talk that you can get smashed in between the two larger talks here. And then what I've learned, you'll be taken through a journey of learning and joining our Brisbane developers industry, I guess. Then we'll close, and just before we close any of the streams, I'll actually put up the different polls at Slido and just make sure that everyone can give their feedback. Give us a star rating if you thought this worked out all right, or if you had some issues. Let us know whatever feedback you have. There's some polls in there about our start time as well. Since we're now doing this remote, we might be able to change that if there's an overwhelming demand to go earlier or later. So yeah, anything you want to feedback, that'd be really great. So bear with us. We're just going to swap speakers now. We're going to get Armağan and I apologize, Raouf. I see nodding. This is good. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. And we're going to go over to Armağan. And so I'm going to mute myself, and then it's all go for you.
Thanks, Kev. So can everyone see my screen all right? I assume that that's correct. All right, I will start presenting. Thanks, Kev, for setting this up. This is very, very exciting to present at BrisJS online. My name is Armağan. Today Raouf and I are going to talk about the design system, and specifically focusing on creating design system when you actually do not have a dedicated team. Because according to a survey that is shared on Google Design page on Medium, organizations where size is up to 500, they usually do not have a dedicated team for design system. And this was also what we experienced at Red Eye as well. So we just would like to share how we got through within this condition and build our own design system, so that maybe you can inspire, and then it help you in some way to build your own design system. So let's start with introducing ourselves first. I'm Armağan. I am currently working as a front-end developer at Red Eye Apps. I'm also co-organizing the Brisbane chapter of Muses Code.js with another 3 diligent women. I have 7 to 8 years experience in software development, and 3 of them is focusing on the front-end dev. So last year I have started to read about design system, and it got me very interested. And I wanted to speak about design system this year, and I would like to share what I have learned while I was investigating and while I was building there's a design system with my team at Red Eye. So this is why we would like to do this talk with Raouf. So you can reach out to me. I put my Twitter handle there. So you can reach out to me if you have any question or just to say hi. Raouf, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if anyone can see me, but I'm here. Yeah, my name is Raouf. I'm a UX and product designer. I've been working in technology for about 7 years now, first starting with IBM as a Bachelor of IT graduate, sort of working in system administration before sort of finding my passion within product businesses. And I've had a variety of different roles in product businesses, from training, marketing, and now design. So we've got a few items on the agenda today. Now, we are going to talk about what is and isn't a design system. So we're going to tackle some misconceptions. We're going to talk about who benefits in the business. So it's more than just designers, and it's definitely more than just designers and developers. We're going to talk about how you can start building it. So how you can start gaining that momentum and aiming for that minimal design system to be your foundation. And we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we experience that you might as well. And just some ways for you to continue the maintenance of the design system. So we're going to start off with what is not a design system. So I'm going to pass back to Armağan.
Thanks, Raouf. So we wanted to start with what is not a design system, because there is some misconception and misunderstanding around this concept. So let's just make a couple of things clear before we dive into it. So the pattern libraries are usually best practice solutions for how a user achieves a goal. They usually include reusable combination of components that address common user objectives with some sequences and flows, such as login screens or forms or search. But unfortunately, pattern libraries are actually not a quite design system yet. So another thing is code component library. So Vue, React, or whatever your favorite JavaScript framework. So those libraries usually consist of seamless components such as buttons, accordions, form elements that can actually be used in multiple applications. So if you have a code component library, that's great, but unfortunately, they are not design systems either. And the last thing is the style guides. So it's very self-explanatory. They are guide of styles. So it usually determines how products should look and feel. They usually include color swatches, correct typographic scales, or spaces. And style guides are not considered design system either. So there's this image which we really like it. So as you can see here, all of the things that we actually have mentioned is a part of a design system. They're not individually the system, but when they get together, they build up the system. So what is it then if we wanted to define the design system? So there are countless of definition of design system, but we actually wanted to challenge ourselves and come up with our own definition. We wanted to see and show you what actually a design system means to me as a developer and what means to Raouf as a designer. So here we go. This is my definition. So for me, a design system usually consists of a component library, documentation, such as technical, behavioral, or usage documentation, some set of guidelines and rules, and visual styles. So this is the first part of my definition. And the second part is usually the explains why we need a design system. So we need design systems because we want to build consistent products and user experiences. And we also wanted to do the development efficiently and faster. So this is my definition. And Raouf, would you like to talk about your own definition?
Sorry, had myself on mute. My definition is that it's a documented set of principles, values, and policies of how a product is built, designed, and interacted with. The system features a collection of not only components, but patterns, journeys, and language. So for me, the design system is more meaningful than simply a collection of components. It's built to deliver an outcome, which is to design and develop great products efficiently and consistently. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who benefits in the business. So as I mentioned before, it does benefit people more. It does benefit the entire business, not just designers and developers. So for example, with product managers, it allows them to have their features released much faster and get to market much more quickly. This obviously is a big advantage if you have competitors, but it also allows you to iterate much faster as well. It also gives you a productivity boost through more aligned and cross-functional teams. So having the designers and developers being able to speak to each other and have a more fluid handover from design to development will absolutely be, great for the team's output. So for product managers, there's a lot of value there for not just technical stakeholders, but business stakeholders as well. Now for designers, can use the design system to have their design principles within the business set and to allow those principles to guide their work. It allows the designers to focus on wider business and user problems. You won't need to spend as much time on interactive elements, such as deciding whether this should be a checkbox or radio button. Should we organize this information as tabs or collapsible items? you'll start to actually think more holistically and solve the overall goal of the users, while being able to use the puzzle pieces of the design system to, I suppose, create the right picture in that particular context. Now, selling to the business was obviously a hard part, and we couldn't we couldn't treat the design system like a separate product with its own dedicated team. So what we did was just start to have those conversations early between designers, developers, and product managers to try to find a way to share those benefits amongst ourselves. So with developers in particular, I'll pass back to Armağan and she can have a talk a bit about how it particularly benefits developers.
Thanks, Raouf. So we share many benefits with designers, especially when it comes to experiences. As Raouf just mentioned, if we have such a system, especially for developers that has a reusable component library and some set of guidelines, we can actually have more time to focus greater problems and more innovative solutions rather than redeveloping the buttons every single day. So those libraries and the guidelines and all those rules definitely improving the developer experience. So another thing is the component-driven development. So design system encourages developers to follow component-driven development approach, where we approach the user interface in a modular way. And CDD also leverages the design system. So it's kind of like two-way win. So CDD is usually very beneficial, but actually it often becomes necessary for multi-product or multi-team organizations. Because if you have teams building applications with their individual or team approaches, rather than following a set of guidelines and without a shared component library, you probably started to see some lack of cohesion, or your UI started to feel a bit disconnected and inconsistent, and duplicate work is going to be inevitable. So the CDD is, I think, very important benefit. The last thing is documentation. So we sometimes don't have documentation, but we should really have. When building such a system, you actually really need a documentation, because when you are building a piece of reusable component, the technical and the implementation documentation are necessary, because the other developers are going to reuse them and they need some sort of documentation to know how to implement this. So let's talk a little bit about building. Raouf, would you like to take on?
Yeah, so how can you start building it? So I really like this illustration from UXPin. So they talk about sort of 4 tenets of building the design system. So be principled. So that kind of covers how to research the features and the components of what you're building, really find out the why. Write it, so all about language. So language is actually a pretty big part of design systems. The tone of voice, the copywriting within the product is often just as important as the UI elements such as buttons and fields and forms. Get visual, of course, that will cover what we kind of know of design systems being the actual visual aspect of the UI, and build something, the development part of it. So a good place to start would be to do a resource and documentation audit of some kind. So as developers, you can start having those conversations with the designers to find out where that documentation lives, if it lives anywhere at all. If you already have started to build a design system, then that's great. Start to have more regular catch-ups and start to engage all stakeholders of the design system to try to improve it. Now, if there's a designer in your business and you don't really have a system yet, the system usually starts off as a style guide. Now, as we mentioned before, this is not the design system, but it's a pretty important part and usually the start of how to actually build it out. So this will likely live in their design tool, either Sketch or Figma. So you need to find a way to have that shared so you can start to bring those designs and turn them into code, to put them into your component code library. And something I'd recommend with everything when it comes to starting to build this is take a human-centered approach. Treat it like a product. So just like products, you want to build an MVP. Now, what is your MVP going to look like for your design system? Now, lots of different companies may value different things. So for example, if your product has quite a lot of text and copywriting is quite important, maybe the tone and voice and language is a pretty important part for you to focus on. If it's buttons and layout, then start focusing on that. Find the most high value aspects of the design system and start working on that first. If you're wanting to be more across the, I suppose, the auditing and the exploration of the UI components themselves, and maybe you don't really have a background with usability or UX, I really recommend Nielsen Norman Group's content in general. And in particular, they have content around something called the 10 usability heuristics. This will give you a set of principles to basically judge your current product on. Of course, just like any methodology, any principles, these are just, this is sort of something for you to springboard off. You don't, there are going to be some things that might work differently for your product than what the principle will allow or says is right. Now, design systems will usually start with the designers, but that doesn't mean developers can't champion design systems within the business. It's a big misconception that only designers really can champion design systems. Developers really get just as much benefit out of it. Now, speaking of the development side, Armağan's going to talk a little bit about starting to build a component, code component library.
Thanks, Ralph. So for a start, for the development team, I actually recommend start building a component library. This is actually what we did at Redeye. So don't rush to build a bunch of components at once. Try to do it along the way. So when you start turning design into code, try to approach the UI as like components and elements, and try to think like, what can be reusable or seamless component? Or is there any part of this design that can fit into an existing component? And is this new design can be achievable by modifying this existing component? Or is there really any way that I can improve the documentation? So always try to contribute your design system along the way. So one of the best practices while building components that are free of application logic is using component workshop tools, because it's usually better and easier to code a component in a self-isolated environment to see how actually it works, feels, behaves, regardless of your application. So one of the most popular ones, and the one that I have experienced with my team, is Storybook. So how can Storybook help you for building your design system? So usually Storybook helps you to workshop your UI components in isolation, so you can see them, you can build them, you can interact and see how they actually works. And another thing that Storybook help us testing our UI components. There are a couple of ways that you can test your components. Of course, writing your unit test is one way of doing it, but Storybook also help us some of the snapshot testing or UI testing. So you can check out, we will leave all these documentation link on the resources. So the other thing is documentation again. So Storybook also help us documenting our UI component usage, some behavioral documentation, and technical props. So I'm just going to try to jump on. Let me know if there is any issue. So this is IBM Carbon Components Storybook. So this is how a usual Storybook looks like. On the left-hand side, you will have all your components, and the components are build up this story. So story is kind of like the state of your components. So when you click the default one, so you will see those components. So they are the default components of the IBM. And there are a lot of different add-ons, and one of them is the knobs. So knobs actually help you to interact with your component to see how actually they behave when you change some of the behavior. So for example, if you would like to add some icons, and it will show you how they look, and there's this like some search, and you can see the secondary buttons, or you can see the danger button, or you can disable them, and you can change the size of it. So it's pretty cool. Like, you don't really need to go and change the props and run your application. So everything is very easy, and then you will just really see on the storybook. So I'm just going to go back to the presentation. And while we were talking about some documentation, Raouf is actually going to talk about a little bit of the design documentation.
Thanks, Armağan. So with the design documentation, what you see here on this slide is pretty much what you think of maybe if you weren't too familiar with design systems. So this is essentially a style guide. So this is medium. This shows the different button states, the different colors, typography, all these elements and components that make the UI, the actual UI designs of the design system. Now, I want to look into IBM Carbon Systems design system. So IBM have a very, very robust design system. Now, this is definitely not something that you'll just get to overnight. Obviously, this is quite robust. And as I was talking, as I mentioned earlier, you really pick out, this could be inspiration for you to find the things that you would see as very valuable for your own business and company, and try to take those elements and start working towards those for your design system. Now, for example, you can see content. Now, this talks about voice and tone. You'll see that there's instructions about conversational levels and examples on how to actually write in your product. Now, on the left-hand side, you've got those guidelines, so that's what we're looking at, but there's also components. So we'll go to button components. And button is, you've got code, usage, style, accessibility. This also dictates, so with the usage in particular, it will talk about alignment, what primary buttons should be aligned to the right or the center. It outlines all of this and has an explanation. So it's, one challenge is that a lot of the time when I pass over designs, maybe there isn't quite, maybe I haven't documented the why behind the designs, and it's not really understood, where designers shouldn't just expect developers to just code their work. They should actually be part of that process to communicate the intent of the design as well. And the design system does solve that problem really well. And of course, color, we'll look at color now. This has, usually design systems will take accessibility into account, so that's really good. You won't have anyone second guessing the colors or making their own palette up, especially when different tones and shades are used in the design system. So hopefully those will have been predetermined and entered in the design system itself. Now, style guides in Storybook are actually really awesome. And Armağan has used Storybook quite extensively, so I'll pass back to her to talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Raouf. So as Raouf mentioned, if colors or the typography is actually a priority of your design system, and if you do not really have resources or people or enough time to actually build those style guide and accommodate it on like some custom website. So Storybook also can help us here. So I'm just going to share. So this is Storybook's design system. So those colors that you are seeing right now are actually the brand color of Storybook, and they have built their own design system at Storybook, of course. So you will see all those description, like not really description, the title, and then the hex code, and there's some monochrome at the end. It's just shade of grays. So this looks pretty cool and really give you the idea what are those colors, and for developers it's really easy to see what colors are available and what are their codes and things. So it is actually really, really easy to build up that page, and I'm just going to show you a piece of code here. So this is again from the Storybook's design system. So the only thing that you really need some custom components from the add-on docs from Storybook. So as you can see, there's this color palette and the color item. Just putting the child's under the color palette and specifying the titles and subtitles, and then the hex color. So as you can see on the right side screenshot, we're just importing the color object for the sake of having a const file and the good practices. So, but really the only things that needs to be done here is passing the color codes into the colors prop, and it will actually generate you all those color swatches. So if you pass only one variable, it will show you the one, like the pink, the blue here. But if you actually show, if you pass an array of color codes, it will actually show you all these shades of colors. So this is pretty cool. And same for the typography. So this is again Storybook's design system, and it's their typography. So you can see the font, the weight, and all these sizes. And it's again really easily achievable by typeset custom component of Storybook. So as you can see, it's just a typeset custom component, and you just need to pass those sizes as font size to the array, and it will just, boom, show your typography on Storybook. All right, so the other thing is publishing. So if you come to the point that you actually have your MVP version of your design system and you think that it is time to share with the rest of the business, so there are a few options that you can go with. So the first one, and the easiest and the straightforward one, and the one that we did at Red Eye, is the accommodating your design system at GitHub pages. So if you ended up building your design system in Storybook, it is actually really straightforward that they actually have a script that you just need to run, and it will generate a static folder of your design system. And then you just need to push this static folder to your GitHub repo, and then it will just be available on the GitHub pages. So this was very, very cool for us in one really less than an hour, maybe having this accessible to everyone. So the second one is zero hide. I haven't experienced it. I haven't personally experienced this yet, but I heard about this tool in one of the design system talk. So we will leave these links on the resources. But the story, Zero Hide is a design system documentation platform. They have some sort of like the templates for components, for colors, typography, guidelines, rules, and you will just import your own content into those templates. They actually also have a way to import your Storybook components. So this is also pretty cool. And the last, but probably not least option is the custom website. So if you have time, if you have a team, I think this will really be the ideal solution to accommodate your design system in a custom website. So we also would like to share a little bit challenges and maybe some tips and tricks how to maintain. Raouf, would you like to continue?
Yeah. So some of the challenges that you may come across and that we experience is really finding time. Finding time is really difficult, especially if your day-to-day work will be disrupted by delivery requirements. We find, I know it sounds very cliche, but communication really is key. So having a clear communication channel between developers and designers. If you can't have regular weekly catch-ups, just try to find time within the week that suits both people, maybe near the end of the day, to just touch base with the design system. Of course, designers have, you know, a lot of their duty is to really keep their own files up to date as well. So what we used at Redeye, we were using Sketch, but we used Abstract as a version control tool. So everything that we were doing, we would update and we would use Abstract to pass to the developers or have the developers access it as well. So that was a really useful tool. And there are lots of other tools out there, but we found Abstract to be quite helpful there. If, as I mentioned, as your days are going to be you'll be predominantly engaged with deliveries of features and products, it's a good idea to just work on the design system as you go along. So for the design side, we might be working on a new feature or project, and we'll get to a challenge that we've tried to use some of our existing components or styles and it's not quite working for whatever reason. Maybe there's a UI component that's nearly there and it just needs to be tweaked. So in that moment, we'll do a bit of research, explore the options that we have, design something, iterate most likely on something that already exists, and then update all the documentation relating to that. So all the style guides, the sketch file and the storybook as well. So that allows us to work and mature the design system as we're already doing, as we're going about our day-to-day work. So improve as you go along. You don't always have to come up with new patterns to solve a problem. Sometimes really tweaking it is going to give you just as good of results, if not better. Armağan, did you have anything else to add for this part?
Maybe just one thing for the developers. So as Raouf mentioned, communication is obviously really important and really the key, and all the other things that Raouf just mentioned. But what I find really helpful while contributing the design system as a developer is that treating design system as a part of my daily job. We have already mentioned about all those things, like improving along when you're improving the projects as you go. So when we don't write tests, so the applications are still working, right? But we know how important writing tests. So it's similar for the design system. And just try to include and make time for design system contribution while you are actually working on your new projects. So that's probably just my 2 cents. So I think we're close to wrapping up. So we have put a lot of resources here and we will be sharing those slides with you on LinkedIn and Twitter. If there is any other place that Kev suggests, we are happy to share. So those are the resources that we have mentioned in the talk and some of the resources that we actually get benefit while we were learning about design systems and building the design system at Redeye. So hopefully it will help you as well. And we would like to finish up with a quote that we both really like. And hope you enjoyed it all. Thank you so much for watching. And please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's wonderful. We do have a few questions for everyone. I'm just going to add my video on. There we go. So just looking at the little monitor over here. We've got IBM Carbon versus Material UI. Which is more scalable at an enterprise level? Any thoughts?
Oh, I actually haven't really used the material or the IBM Carbon system, so I probably cannot really talk for the experience. But those are the open source design systems. So if you're really going to go with an open source tool rather than building your own, I would suggest doing some researching around this. Sorry if I didn't really experience it.
From my
Do you have any?
from the design side, it's funny because I think I see all of these design systems as, especially material design, gets a lot of attention as almost being the Bible of design systems, that if something doesn't follow material design, it's not right design. So I think use the design system that suits your needs most. I think they're both just as scalable. I think material design would probably potentially be more useful because it's regularly updated by Google. It's very, it's across all devices as well. So Google's material design, you can't really go wrong with it. I suppose if you were wanting to build for your own product though, I would maybe take material design and have the liberty to tweak to suit your own product as you need. I don't think there's a one size fits all, but material design is probably the one I would go with as a starting point.
Great. Okay, let's look at the next one. So how do you balance this between being a rigid set of design rules and encouraging new ideas or introducing new patterns?
I think when we're designing, it's yeah, again, it's this is where I've learned, because I definitely, when I started designing, I came from the background of looking at all these design systems, and if something was slightly off or wrong, I would think, oh, I'm not doing this right. But really, I've come to realize that there isn't always a right answer for a problem. Sometimes the right answer is something completely new, in which case do it. I think have common sense. Like if you can reuse a component, do that. So there's been times at Red Eye, for example, where the value of a new component or pattern might be just that little bit more usable, but that means it would be longer to develop, which means it would take longer for us to get to market, in which case maybe the compromise can be made there, where it's better to just reuse another component that is almost as good, even if it's not quite perfect. Especially in our case, a lot of the time, those components were still a significant upgrade from where we were in the live product. So I think really it's a balance of just knowing, I think consider the development effort and the opportunity cost. So if it's worth spending that extra time to develop it, then that must provide enough value for you to invest those resources into it. Otherwise, just maybe make slight tweaks or reuse what you have.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's an investment into that particular component and how you think it'll pay off in the long run. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to add one thing to this question. So when we started building this design system, I was kind of like in the stage that everything really needs to be as a component, or everything really needs to look same. And then, but when we actually had a conversation with the design team and with my team, I kind of came to the point that you actually really not to fit every single thing into the existing component or the one that is going to be reusable. Like not every single thing needs to be the same. So it is okay to have some different like buttons or whatever your the most used pattern. So we don't really need to fit every single thing into the existing component. So I still using the creativity, so it is all good.
That's excellent. We got a few extra ones coming here. What does scalability mean regarding material design or other design systems? How does the design system scale? I presume they're going into that.
Maybe. So, for example, one thing, I'm not sure if it really answers this question, but we have a component library that have like 40 components, over 40 components. And recently, Storybook has made a change on their API and decided to make the story of API redundant. And so we actually had to go and modify all of the components that we have to the new structure. So I think when you have like 200 components, and when you are using the tools that is actually really updating every single day, you might not really be, maybe you might not really want to use this. So it's not really making your component library or design system scalable. I don't know if that really answers, but this was something that we experienced.
Yeah, getting that perspective as somebody who's gone through that process is really valuable. The last question we had in here, and I think it's probably a quick answer, is any reason why Netlify is omitted from the deploy list? I've seen a fair few storybooks deployed there, and it seems a quick and easy way. So that they do great support for static site generation. I'm assuming that it's just you can't list every service, right?
Yeah, and I think some of the contributors are common. Like Storybook always encourages people to use the Chromio for the UI testing. There are countless of tools, but they always mention about these tools. So I think they share some of the contributors. I don't think there's another reason.
Fantastic. All right, thanks very much. There's raucous applause on the live stream. Thank you very much. Fantastic job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right, we're gonna just jump back into our next speaker, and we've got the lightning talk in between. So Josh Wolf, if you'd like to take it away, since you're a streaming expert. There he is. Thanks very much, Josh. I'm going to stop sharing and mute my microphone. Take it away.
Okay, let's see if this brings me up. I think I can share my screen, right? Let me see. Start share. Let's try this. Desktop 1, share. All right. How crazy is this, man? We're on the internet. This is far out. This is like we're in the future. My name's Josh Wolf. I'm streaming to you from the future, 2 hours in the future. I'm in Auckland, New Zealand on my new 100 megabit fiber connection. I work as a developer advocate at Camunda, and I work particularly on the ZB workflow engine for microservices orchestration. What's this one? Oh yeah, this is my blog, joshwolf.com. And I also stream on Twitch as the legendary Josh Wolf. And this is the talk for today. ES2020 features from the future that you can use today. This is the repo here. I'll put a link to it. I might as well drop it into the chat now. So if you like, you can code along. Let's just drop this in here. Why, thank you, Ash. Yes, it is quite nice, isn't it? Actually, why don't we go into my study for this next section? Let me see. Zoom preferences. The smell of rich mahogany and leather-bound books. Okay, let's go back to here. Alrighty, so ES2020. How do I get rid of this thing? Hide the thumbnail video. Good, get rid of that. ES2020. It's the future. It's now. We're going to look at 3 of the features in ES2020. There are a bunch of different ones. These are the ones that I like the best, maybe the most useful, give you a bit of a taster. So here we go. This is the demo project that you saw. So if we go back to it, actually, here are the 3 we're going to look at. We're going to start with optional chaining. Now, the thing about these features are that they're so new that they don't have widespread support. Like optional chaining, only natively supported in Google Chrome. So Firefox, Safari, forget it, Node, not yet. You can get them with Babel, and you can get them with TypeScript. I'm going to show you how to get them using TypeScript from version 3.8. We're going to look at optional chaining. We're going to look at nullish coalescing. What an epic name. And we're also going to look at promise all settled, those three. This one here actually has native support, as you can see on latest versions of some of these platforms, but the other ones you've got to transpile to get the goodness. Let's have a look at optional chaining first. So here in the demo project, optional chaining. Okay, so pretty simple kind of proposition here. We're just going to console log. We're going to take in an object, which is like dynamically typed, could be anything, and we're going to console log property A, subproperty B of this thing. And here I'm calling it, passing in an object which has the requisite properties. So if I now go npm run, this one's called optional. Ta-da! Transpiles, runs, we get hello world, which is pretty much what we would expect because, as you can see here, we passed in hello world. Now, what happens if we pass in an object that does not have any of those kind of expected properties, right? So we'll run it again. Boom, blows up. Why does it blow up? Because it says, if we look in here, cannot read property subprop B of undefined. So object is an object, but it doesn't have property A or prop A, so it definitely doesn't have subprop B. Let me just check if my mic is working. Mic working okay? Somebody can let me know in the chats if you can hear me. Actually, that's going to be delayed because I was watching the stream earlier. There is a delay. I'm just going to flip back and I'm just going to do it on faith that you can hear. Oh, here we go. Someone's chatting me on this one. All good from Kev. Awesome. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. Okay, so it blows up, right? Now, here's how we, in the past, how we used to deal with this. Back in the 1800s, when JavaScript was first developed, we'd do something like this, right? We would say if object, well, you know what? Actually, we should actually test here to see if the object even exists, right? Yeah, let's go all the way, man. What happens if it's undefined itself? Okay, if object and object has a property A and object property A has a subproperty B, then console log object prop A subprop B. So we can run that. That's how we used to do it back in the day, kids. That's how it was done. Okay, so did not blow up, but because we passed in an empty object, didn't explode, right? Now, here's another way that you can achieve the same kind of behavior here is this way, where we use, this is like, it's kind of like, it's a combination of short circuit evaluation, right? So we're saying if object and object prop A and object prop A subprop B. So with short circuit evaluation, because and requires all of the operands to be true for the evaluation to be true, if any of them are false or undefined falsely at any point, it'll exit from the evaluation. So it'll exit at any point. And with this assignment, when you do an assignment with the short circuit evaluation, what it does is it'll assign the very last thing at the end. If it evaluates to true, it'll assign it to, in this case, message, and then we'll log out message, right? So if we try running that, we should expect to see undefined, right? Because we passed in an empty object. Let's pass in our original kind of nicely defined object. Boom. And we should now see hello world and undefined. So that's the behavior of this one here. Now, what optional chaining is optional chaining is basically syntactic sugar over this short circuit evaluation and assignment. And what it looks like is it uses this kind of question mark operator here. You can see here I've got object question mark dot prop A question mark dot subprop B. So it's pretty much equivalent to the previous example. So if we now run this, we should see the same output of hello world and undefined. Okay, that didn't work. Let's have a look. What doesn't it like about it? Unexpected token. Okay, I think I am transpiling to the wrong target. I am. So this is interesting, actually. Let's have a look. So one of the targets you can transpile to with TypeScript is ES2020 itself, which pretty much just erases the types and gives you straight up ES2020 JavaScript. So if we have a look at optional chain, you can see in here, it's pretty much given me what I wrote before, right? Let's change the target to ES6. So we're going to transpile it to classic ES6. So we'll run it again. Now this time we expect to see hello world undefined. Yep, great. So we got that behavior out of this single line. Amazing. Now let's have a look at the transpiled code, optional chain. you can see what it's transpiled it into is this monstrosity here, which you would not want to maintain manually. Yeah, but that's basically how it does it. Crazy. If you were going to write it yourself, you would write something like that instead. Now, one other thing about this, right? I'll just show you this. It's not, oh yeah, I'll commit it as well. So what you can do is you can do execution, right? So if I go here const, I don't know, O equals, so we're going to call it, no, we're going to make it an object, and we're going to go command, right? And then we'll go sum function, and then here we'll go command 2. No, just command. Okay. And then if I now do this, right? If I go O, dot like this, I think. No, like this. Ah, yeah, like this. Command. And then I can do dot question mark and then that. Nope, it's question mark dot. Some function takes some kind of object, so I'll put that in there. There you go. It'll execute that, right? And I can do the same thing here. I can put in something which, I wonder if the type checker is going to tell me that don't exist. Yeah, it is. Anyway, the type checker is too smart. It knows that it doesn't exist. I wonder if I do this. If I put command 2 and then make it undefined, maybe that could work. Try that. Nope, it still does not like it. Never has no signatures. It's too smart for its own good. Well, let's just go crazy on this thing and say as any. Yeah, there you go. You love it. So there you go. Now, oh man, it looks crazy. Yeah, it does. It starts to look crazy, and you start to ask yourself the question, you know, like, am I making the best life choices that I could make programming this way, you know, like in such a dynamic environment? I don't even know what this thing is at runtime. Let's just like randomly put stuff, because, you know, if it's undefined at runtime, how does your program behave with undefined kind of, you know, inputs and commands? But anyway, let's run it and see what happens, hey? Run optional. There you go. So let's comment out this first call, these first two calls here, so you can see it happen, hey? Back here, run again. npm run optional. So it runs, it executes this first one and outputs undefined, and then the second one simply does not execute. No runtime errors, right? So you're kind of getting rid of like undefined at runtime by using optional property accesses. It's called optional chaining. What else is it also known as? Optional chaining? No, that's pretty much what it's called. Yeah, but I don't know if I would really use this so much, because it's kind of like a symptom that there's something wrong in the structure of your program, that you don't actually know what's going on. So I would tend, and usually this is like on the boundary of your program where you're taking in some kind of object, like a complex JSON object, maybe over a REST boundary, somewhere like that, in which case I would usually kind of use something like IOTS, which is a runtime type system for IO decoding and encoding. Anyway, use with caution, but it's pretty cool. Optional chaining, save. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, nullish coalescing. This one I love because of the name nullish coalescing. Epic. So nullish coalescing. Let's have a look at the problem. Now, in this example that I have here, contrived, we're going to pass in a parameter, and then what we're doing here is we are again kind of faking some kind of system boundary. So I'm imagining that we're getting something out of the local storage. This is a problem that I saw on Stack Overflow, actually, where I proposed this solution for the guy. So, you know, you're reading something out of the local storage of the browser, and then what you're doing here is you're then, you know, assigning for your value either what you got from the local storage or as a default parameter, the number 10, right? So if we pass in 12, so we're imagining that we are, you know, hydrating from our local storage the value 12. So this one is called nullish. And then we get the value 12, you know, which is kind of what we'd expect here. This is again is that short circuit evaluation with assignment. So with OR, if any of the operands is true, then that evaluates as true. So it short circuits the evaluation. So since it knows that this is truthy, it exits from this evaluation and assigns that value to here. Now, if that is false, it'll, you know, evaluate the next operand here, that evaluates to a truthy value, it'll assign it to value. So if we then do this, so we pass in effectively undefined. So we're going to have undefined or 10, we would expect it to assign 10 to value, right? So if we run this, and this is quite a common kind of way to program in dynamic JavaScript, and we got a 10, which is what we expected, right? Now, here's where the problem comes in. So this guy was doing something with Spotify, and he was getting like the default track number. And the problem with that was that 0 is actually a valid track number. But the problem is that 0 is also a falsy value. So if you pass 0 into this, watch what happens. You get 10. You didn't get the 0 that you expected, right? And the reason is that 0 evaluates as falsy, so it continues evaluation here, gets a truthy value, assigns it to value, and then logs it out. So we got 10 when we actually wanted 0. So, usually the way you would program around this is maybe you do something like this, I don't know. Ampersand. And no, I don't know. I don't even know what you do. You'd have to do some kind of crazy thing. Crazy and complicated. But anyway, you can do it with nullish coalescing like this. Now what nullish coalescing does is, again, it's kind of syntactic sugar around the same kind of idea, but the real difference here is that only really nullish values like undefined, null, void will evaluate as false. And then if it's a 0, if it's like, I don't know what the other falsy values are, false, there you go. If it's 0 or false, that will actually evaluate as true or truthy for a nullish coalescing. So exactly the same code here, but we've replaced this, this line here with the OR operator with the nullish coalescing operator, which is 2 question marks, right? So we run the same code. We're going to pass in 0. And we got nothing. Okay, what happened there? Forgot to call it? Yeah, okay. That would be Y. Okay, and run. Nullish coalescing. We get a 0. So we can pass in a 0 and we can get a 0. Of course, you might be thinking, well, why don't I just put like a, a default parameter on there? Yes, you can also do that. But that's why what I'm doing here is I'm faking that we're actually getting the value out of the local storage. So there's some system boundary that isn't like a function signature where we can use a default ES6 default parameter. So nullish coalescing. Let's have a look at the next one. Final one for today, promise.allSettled. Okay, so if you're familiar with promises, they are like future values. They're eagerly evaluated. So as soon as you construct them, they start executing little machines, right? So I've got like a resolves promise and a rejects promise, and they just like, the resolves one waits for a second, resolves. The rejects one waits 700 milliseconds and then rejects. Now let's have a look at this classic promise.all kind of machine, right, that you can use for dealing with arrays of promises. So if I now run npm run promise, I'm passing in 2 resolves promises, 1 and 2. I get back my array of results from the promise, and they just get logged out. So they both resolved, I got them both back. Now, what happens if I pass in 2 promises that resolve and 1 promise that rejects? And remember, the rejecting promise is going to reject after 700 milliseconds. The resolving promises will resolve after 1 second. So let's run that and see what happens. Boom, blows up. What promise all does is as soon as any one of the promises rejects, it just halts the whole operation of the thing, and then goes into the catch branch. But it doesn't actually halt everything because those other promises are still running. So it's like, what happened to that stuff? Who knows? So promise all settled, what it does is it just allows all of them to run and then gives you all of the results at the end. So this problem is, I put it on my blog, handling failure and success in an array of asynchronous tasks. So it's about handling failure and success in an array of asynchronous tasks whose execution may fail, right? And this blog post here, I went into like a lot of detail about different kind of machinery and different things that you can do, blah, blah, blah. But the TLDR at the top is use promise all settled. So that's what we're going to do. Promise all settled. Save that, and then we're going to run it. We've got 2 promises that resolve, 1 that rejects. And then what we get when we use promise all settled is we get the outcomes of all of the promises. And this one is probably, I think, the most useful piece of machinery out of these new ES2020 features, because those promises, in this first case, where we saw it reject with error 3, the other 2 promises actually ran to completion and produced some kind of result, but we no longer have access to that. So it's like, what happened? But in this case, we now know those 2 were fulfilled. These are the results we got. This one was rejected. That's the reason. You can do like retry logic, rollbacks, any of that kind of stuff that you're going to do. That's promise.allSettled. And let's have a look at what that transpiles to. Okay, it's natively supported in, really? In ES6? Okay, looks like it is. Okay, interesting. Yeah, optional chaining, another crazy kind of construction, and then nullish coalescing. Here you go. It's like a checking that it's not null, checking that it's not void, and then applying it there. What about? Okay, so undefined must evaluate to one of those 2. Anyway, there you go. So you can get these features now in TypeScript: nullish coalescing, optional chaining, and promise all settled. ES2020 features available at your fingertips right now from TypeScript 3.8. Demo repo is in the chats. And that's me.
That's wonderful. Thanks for that, Josh.
You're welcome.
We had a few questions pop up there. There was some questioning about, does it affect anything in terms of performance? Then that was on the nullish coalescing side of things. That really becomes a syntactic sugar thing, right? It doesn't really do anything performance-wise.
Exactly, yeah. You can see the code that it produces. You could just write that yourself easily enough.
Mm-hmm. It's being provided by Chloe. So that's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. We didn't get any particular things in the, yeah, I just checked. The Slido is clear. You're all good to go. But thank you very much, and I love your backdrop and your t-shirt, JS. Yeah, we'll cross over to Kim for our final speaker of the night. Thanks very much. Cool. There's Kim.
Hi.
Hi. We can hear your audio, we can see your video, and I think we're ready to just let you go straight for it. So you're going to give us an intro about what you've learned.
That's right. That was a fantastic presentation by Josh. I think I'm going to slow things right down and bring down the professionalism a little bit. But yeah, let's go through this. I started coming to the BrisJS meetups around about September last year. And I must say that it's got some of the best pizza in town when there's no virus. It was interesting that I always met students when I was at the meetups, and I thought that my recent experience would be useful for other students or people entering the job market in and around Brisbane. So just a bit about myself. I have been coding for about 35 years. I've got 28 years experience as a mechanical engineer, working with as a maintenance specialist. So in that role, I did project management, business process re-engineering, implementing maintenance systems, Six Sigma, continuous improvement, root cause analysis, reliability analysis, facilitation, and some data analytics. For me, it was time for a change. So I started studying IT as a postgraduate, and my holidays came along, and I thought it'd be a good time to start trying to figure out how I'm going to enter the workforce. And I suppose that's what this presentation is all about. So, so we'll dive right in. So I wanted to know, or figure out really, what it was I was looking for, what type of job, and what interested me while I was doing my studies is JavaScript, Python, Java, Android, cloud computing. I had some interest in embedded systems as well, but I think I wanted to just focus on those other areas. And so I went through looking at the jobs that were interesting to me in advertisements and looked at what my course was providing me. And I could build a list of desirable knowledge and experiences that I wasn't going to get from my course. So this is the list that I came up with. Real sort of real life experience in Agile and Scrum, test-driven development, especially with user interfaces, automated testing, JavaScript, TypeScript, React, Bootstrap, Python, team-based software development. So in my engineering career, I'd actually done quite a bit of coding in bits and pieces to solve problems, but I'd always done it independently. And so I thought to myself, it would be good to have that experience well and truly before I graduate, so that, yeah, that would help me in my long-term career. Pair programming, version control and release, and cloud computing services. So with that list, I started looking for vacation work after my exams. I went to meetups. I went to a couple of free software training events. I think one was on artificial intelligence. There was an ICT launch event, looking for assistance from the uni careers contacts, my own personal network, asking people to look to their networks, looking through job advertisements and applying to those, and also conversations with recruiters. After a month, I was in a situation where I had one opportunity where the person I was talking to was keen, but didn't have a budget yet. There was another opportunity where they were also really keen, but they were about to go into a venture capital fundraising exercise, and they said after that, there'd definitely be something. There was another opportunity I was looking at. This guy wanted free work and nothing relevant to the list that I'd come up with. There was a couple of other job opportunities that were a bit of a distraction from what I was trying to do. And then the fourth opportunity came up. So this was started out with an offer after I applied, an offer to do an online test. I successfully completed this test. I received an offer and I started early January. So that was like, yeah, 1 month after my start of my search. So with this new work situation, it was a new software product that was under development with a small team of expert software engineers. And I must say it was a really great team. So looking at what my objective list was and what I've been able to get from this experience over the Christmas holidays. Agile and Scrum, definitely covered that one. Test-driven development with user interfaces wasn't part of it. Automated testing, I've covered, and that was very interesting for me. The role has some JavaScript, but it really is Python dominated. The team software development, I'm definitely getting that experience, and I'm finding that extremely invaluable. Pair programming isn't part of the normal practices there, but version control and release control, especially using Git, it's something that I hadn't done before. I mean, it was mentioned and covered in my subject, but actually living with Git day to day compared to having read about it is an entirely different thing. And you can see just how versatile you could use Git for a variety of different scenarios. It's no wonder that these tools are so broadly adopted. And yeah, using cloud services is part of the experience that I've picked up as well. In addition to this, the things that weren't on my list that I think I'm finding really valuable is hands-on working with Docker, hands-on working with S3 and Lambda, expanding my professional network, working intensively with a single IDE. There's a bit of telephony with Twilio, lots of manual testing, the code review process, and the automation around that it was really, really interesting. It just lets you get in and fix things quickly. And yeah, getting feedback from people who are very knowledgeable very quickly with low effort is fantastic. There's some language-specific features, just like the sorts of things that Josh was talking about. In Python, I hadn't used async.io for asynchronous interactions, list comprehensions and enumerations. So I kind of been programming language agnostic and using the same types of features, fundamental features across all the languages that I've been using. And this is a very good experience to be driven to use some of the more advanced or specific features. Looking at options, like I've done some study on React myself, but looking at different ways it could be used and arranged was certainly an interesting experience for me. Living with Slack, I found out we could organize to get asynchronous assistance from people who are busy, expert developers, and yeah, posing questions and then getting an answer later and then working on it from there. I think we use that particularly well. And the practices around hack days, tech debt days, well, I haven't written that correctly, and continuous improvement in software engineering is really good to live it rather than just read it. I have had some transferable skills. So I had used and studied JavaScript. I had used and studied, oh, not studied Python, but I had used Python. My database experience and user interface work that I've done before. Teamwork, just across 30 odd years of working in industry, those things are just entirely transferable. Problem solving, data analysis, the whole sort of area around proposals, scoping and design, and documentation. So that pretty much covers, I suppose, a summary of my experience. So I think, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. I'll probably race through that a bit quickly. Are you there, Kevin?
I am. You did great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that overview. What was your particular challenge? I guess I'll kick off with my own question. What did you find the hardest part to break in and or to go through all these different skills and to learn?
The hardest challenge was actually breaking into something entirely new. I think when you've done 30 years in the same sorts of things, turning around 90 degrees and going in a totally different direction, probably as a mature age person as well, jumping into a new industry. The people have been exceptionally helpful and receptive. I think everyone I've met at meetups has been fantastic, yet yourself included. But yeah, I think that challenge is the big unknown. You know, decided to take this path, and you know, how hard is it going to be to, as a mature age person, get a job in a different environment, competing against young people. And I suppose it's been like a breath of fresh air, really. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, so. I think
fantastic. We've got a few questions that popped up here. So the first one is, what kind of job boards and feeds did you review to build that list?
I think Seek was the dominant one. I also looked at Stack Exchange or Stack Overflow jobs.
Yeah.
I had worked as a consultant for 4 years myself as an independent consultant, previously doing some software development, and the remote work really worked for me. So I looked at the remote.io, I think it was called. It's a while ago now. So yeah, there's probably 3 or 4 main ones, and sometimes I didn't realize I was looking at job ads that were stale, but it didn't matter because I was looking through the sorts of things that they were asking for, things they wanted to see and experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was mainstream ones.
Did your uni have a career mentor scheme?
I'm sure it does for your typical undergraduate program. For a graduate diploma, I didn't encounter it. So
Okay.
I started working with the careers people at the time when I decided I was looking for work over the Christmas holidays.
Mhm.
But up until that point, I'd seen some ads come through and some notifications come through about the careers group, but I was focusing on my studies. So I just left that till later.
Makes sense. Did you come up with any goals or objectives you found weren't as useful as you'd expected?
No. I've used it as a real learning opportunity, and I've been looking for the positives in everything. And I suppose having coded amongst my other jobs for so long, I'd always been curious about what it's like working as a software engineer as opposed to a mechanical engineer or a maintenance systems specialist. So there's been lots of little gaps that have been filled in. So every day is a new challenge. And to be honest, I think my employer is making special effort to assist me in learning and giving me appropriate challenges.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, I'm very lucky in that regard that I fell on my feet with this role I have.
Yeah, that's good. We might, well, depending on if you want to or if you think it's appropriate, you should give them a shout out. There's also there's a few more. There's a couple more coming in as well. Let me tick that one off. I guess that leads directly into that that comment you just made. Was the professional experience you did considered internship or just a very full stack role to cover so many skills? So I guess you summarized it there as well. Your employer kind of made sure to give you a breadth of coverage there as well.
Yeah, well, I think because I'd gone to the effort of spelling out what it was I was looking for, during the interview process, we did a bit of a matchup, and there was a bit of, yeah, we do that, we can do that, we can probably do that. And actually through that interview process and being made the offer, I was actually talking about making sure that I had time to focus on actual development rather than trying to deliver products. So working in a team, I actually suggested a lower pay because I was there to learn over top of, and so the idea was that there'd be budget to get someone else to do anything that must be delivered, but the whole premise was the fact that I was there to learn, and that was respected. And yeah.
So you essentially put yourself in an paid internship by doing that.
Yeah. Very lucky it was paid too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's illegal not to get paid if you're delivering any work for a company and an internship. Just remember that. That's for everyone at home as well. Don't do any free work. It's actually illegal. But if you're just doing everything purely learning and just there on the job, they can offer an unpaid internship. But if something actually goes to customer and they make money off it, you got to be paid for that. I don't like people being exploited, so I had to make that comment right there. So there's a couple more. You mentioned Slack. Public Slack groups you joined.
Sorry, what was the question?
You mentioned Slack. Were there any public Slack groups that you joined?
No. I suppose my Slack experience has been purely on the job and the way we use it on the job. I understand that there's a variety of ways you can use it and different features that you can turn on depending on maybe what you subscribe to or pay for or whatever. But I suppose for me, just the fact that I hadn't used Slack before, and we've got, even though there's 4 of us sitting essentially in one little cubicle area, the idea of using a messenger in my old roles to talk to people who are just behind you was like crazy. It wouldn't be accepted. But in this scenario where everyone is so busy, but they're such experts in their areas, we kind of started using it in that way, and it worked really well.
That's great to hear. Yeah, so I think they're referring to there's like the Brisbane Slack. We've got a JS channel on there as well. It's just brisbane.slack.com. That's a public one you can get on as well. There's a couple around. There's a Brisbane Developers Slack. So there's actually a whole bunch of different Slacks that are like semi-public. Technically, they usually host a web page that will let you get an invite, because the Slack system is really more about invitation into a workspace. There's a few of those there. I think it might actually be worth for me to collate a few valuable dev-oriented Slacks around and see if we can put them up on BrisJS now that that's prompted me. One final question from Neil Murray. Did you experience any ageism, both in the position and seeking work?
Possibly during the seeking work, but nothing that I could lay my hands on. And possibly the fact that the work group I ended up working for is relatively older. So possibly there's an affinity there where I was considered because I wasn't too different from the group that was already there. So if it was there, it was very subtle, and maybe it wasn't there at all. You know, you really got to read into these things to find out. There's nothing overt about that. I certainly had no overt ageism. Everyone that I spoke to has been very engaging and supportive, and at work hasn't been a problem.
At the end of the day, we had a great experience with a good team.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Well, thank you very, very much for your talk, and I think everyone's enjoyed the Q&A there as well. I'll just check on the YouTube stream. Yeah, learning is a lifelong process. Good shout, absolutely. A lot of interesting, awesome content. So there you go. Thanks very much, and we'll bring up a few of the different polls that I've queued up here. Just how would you rate the online presentation facilities tonight? And also, while we do BrisJS, I can run more than one poll at a time. Looks like no. I'm going to go back to my previous one. I'll let everyone give us a star rating first, and I'll just chat about next month's presentations. So one of the things I just did want to cover was yeah, we're gonna keep doing these. There's not a direct end in sight for our coronavirus isolation, especially not in Queensland. So however long it takes, we're going to try and keep it fun. Now that we're a bit more accessible to remote participants, we're going to try and cast the net a bit wider as well, and see if anyone from outside of, I guess, Brisbane Metro can attend, especially our folks in Gold Coast.
Amsterdam.
There you go. Jumped right in. That's well said. I'm seeing a talk from our Amsterdamian former BrisJS alumnus.
Do you have any indication of how many people are watching now, Kevin?
Yes, we had hovered between 30 to 55 to 60 concurrent viewers at any one time. So yeah, it fluctuates. Depends if people have to jump in there or not. So yeah, we had a really good response. I'm just a bit afraid that we lost somebody, and we had like 115 people RSVP. So I was like, oh god, I better send out another tweet with the link. So hopefully we didn't scare anyone off with the technical hitches at first. Stream health looks good. We're not using enough bandwidth. Is something that YouTube Studio is actually complaining about. So it's like, you're only using 800 kilobits a second. You should use 2,500. Well, I'm sorry. It's just too damn efficient. So that's up to Zoom actually. So that's thanks to them. Oh no, still got a few ratings coming into the poll there. While we've still got everyone in the call, does anyone want to just sort of pose some questions to the BrisJS audience or give any shout outs? You're all still on the call. Armağan, Raouf, Josh. Feel free to jump in there. How was your experience tonight, and would you do it again?
100%. Zepic. I'm in Auckland right now, and I got my fiber connection at 6 p.m. Brisbane time just in time. Yeah, because I've burned through all of my roaming data on my phone. But in Brisbane, I have 3 internet connections in my apartment, and I have to use different ones at different times of the day and in different weather conditions. Like, no kidding. If it's raining, you know, the microwave link goes down, switch to my phone. This has been awesome.
That's fantastic. Glad to hear it, man. I appreciate your input, and appreciate you joining us all the way from over the ditch.
Over the ditch, yeah.
All right.
It as well. Sorry, Kevin. It was great, and I was like less nervous because it's hard, you know, to speak it. But I was at my home, so it was great, and it was very sweet that Ash joined from Amsterdam. Jamie just messaged me on Facebook that she joined from UK. So it's so sweet.
Fantastic, yeah. Yeah, we actually had a choice of Zoom's got a few built-in features for streaming to YouTube or straight to Facebook Live. I think YouTube's a little bit more accessible since not everyone's on Facebook. There's a whole bunch of people with some staunch stances against the old big blue Facebook, which is fair enough. So went with YouTube. Happy to get feedback on that too. There's a couple of other platforms we could, you know, do Twitch or other things like that. I know Josh has got a thumbs up going up there. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of options there for us.
Hey, you know what the benefit of this is? Like, how long is it going to take you to get the YouTube videos of tonight's talks up?
DVR'd straight up on there, so there you go. Yeah.
I did another webinar about a week ago, and this experience has been much easier technically. And I must say that the backgrounds are definitely an improvement over the other the situation I had. The room I'm in is really not as interesting as the Heron Island beach, I must say.
You've just got my little lab desk behind me there, which is just where I do some soldering and some like projects and tinkering. So not nearly as interesting background as you guys.
You've got a feature wall there.
Yeah, feature wall. Yeah,
that's pretty good.
My whole room is pumpkin orange actually, so that's it's just to brighten up my life while I'm working in this room. That's cool, folks. I'm gonna have to close this, otherwise. Oh no, we got another vote in just in case. Oh, okay. So we got a lot of keeping. We got an hour earlier start. There's like 30% of the vote on that one. 30 minutes earlier start. There's a few on that. So yeah, we're looking either the same or maybe a little earlier. It doesn't actually, there's only like 10 votes here right now. I think that's what that is, 10 votes. Okay, I might call it. Any last minute voters? Actually, they're going to be like 10 seconds behind me, so I'll give them 10 seconds. And I might look really pink at this point because I've got a giant rainbow beam light here in front of me. I'm not sure if that's affecting my video adversely, but I look really pink on the video. I just found that out now. Okay, how we get some more votes in? 12 votes. Thanks very much, folks. I'm just going to call it.
Thanks, Kevin. It's great.
Okay, this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was awesome.
Leave an open suggestion box, basically. Type anything you want. Feel free to be anonymous. Really happy to take all your feedback, folks. And thanks again. We'll do this again soon. Yes, could you please share your resources of the first speaker, Armağan? Could you share your slide deck? There's some keen folks. There you go. So they'll be reassured now. We can always link the GitHub issue there if you want to pop that on there. Otherwise, I'm happy to tweet it out as well. I can get that on.
I'll do all of it. Thanks.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks very much, everyone. I'll close the stream down and just pop up the. Hang on, I'm going to do sharing. There's a bit like I'm a professional. There we go.
Epic.
There we go. I should have had that up already. So, thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate everyone's attendance. Hopefully this sort of brightens your isolation at this point and helps keep that knowledge growing and things like that. So if you've been learning something interesting over your period of being homebound, and maybe it's remote work tools, or maybe you've developed your own different techniques and maybe even some JS things, browser hacks and collaboration tools, feel free to get in touch, submit those issues to our GitHub. I'd really appreciate that. We're going to line up 3 new speakers for next month. I think the format worked. We had a long one, a medium one, and a short one. I'll try and mix it up, keep the pacing a bit different. And if anyone knows anyone at any pizza joints that's willing to do a mass delivery for all of our attendees, including internationals, it seems.
Internationally, yeah.
That would be really appreciated. So that's awesome.
I want drone delivery, Kevin. I want drone delivery.
Drone delivery, yeah. Well, see, I think Amazon did a trial in Australia. I just don't think it's in Queensland. But yeah, depending where you are, maybe you can like get something delivered. But they, I think, hang on, it was Guzman y Gomez. You could get Mexican food delivered by drone. They did a trial. Obviously, parcels by Amazon. I don't know if there was any pizza in that. We should look this up. If not, we should do it. We'll get the IoT meetup. We'll get Chris on that, and we'll see if we can find anyone who's keen to do a mass BrisJS drone fly out. That would be really quite epic.
And thank you, Kev, for putting this together. Thanks for keeping the faith, keeping the JS alive.
My pleasure. If we can host a meetup, we're going to host a meetup. It hasn't been cancelled, and we're going to keep that going.
Nothing stops JavaScript.
Nothing does stop JavaScript. Runs everywhere, runs always. All right, folks. Thanks very much. Have a great night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Mm.